By the 19th century, the few women doctors of earlier times had been forgotten, and all doctors in the advanced countries were men. So were most other people in positions of power. It was a man's world, in which a woman's place was in the home, looking after the children, or working at a humble job like that of a servant. A tiny minority of women protested about this, and about 1850 one or two of them determined to become doctors. They faced formidable difficulties. For instance, science was now essential for the study of medicine, and very few girls learned any science at all. Until the 1850s, there were hardly any secondary schools for girls. Even more serious, the world of medical students was an all-male one. They were used to coarse jokes and rowdy behaviour. This was a time when young ladies of richer classes were taught to be refined and delicate. The first woman in modern times to qualify as a doctor was Elizabeth Blackwell, an American teacher. She taught herself enough basic science and saved enough money to pay for her course in medical school. Most medical schools refused to admit her because she was a woman, but finally she applied to a small college in the state of New York. The country students were not used to such fine ladies as those of the city colleges. The professors asked the students for their opinion, and they voted to accept Elizabeth. She was a good student, and she qualified in 1849. At first she found it hard to find work, but in 1853 she set up a successful clinic in New York for poor women and children. Question: why should the poor be more ready to accept women doctors than the rich? The opposition to women medical students was much stronger in the well-established medical schools and universities of Europe than in a small American college. But in the 1850s, a few determined women in Britain were beginning to campaign for greater equality of the sexes. In 1859, Dr. Blackwell, whose work had by now made her famous, travelled to Europe. One of those who met her in England was Elizabeth Garret. Aged 24, she had a good education, plenty of money, and some support from her father. She determined to follow Dr. Blackwell's example and qualify as a doctor. At first, her father was horrified. Source 2. I have just concluded a satisfactory talk with father on the medical subject. He does not like it, I think. He said that the whole idea was disgusting and he could not entertain it for a moment. I asked what there was to make doctoring more disgusting than nursing, which women were also doing and which ladies had done publicly in the Crimea. He could not tell me. I think he will probably come round in time. I mean to renew the subject pretty often. A letter from Elizabeth Garret-Anderson to her friend Emily Davis in 1859. Source 1 shows Elizabeth Garret-Anderson in 1870, whilst Source 3 has the following quotation: young Reginald de Braces has succeeded in catching a bad cold in order that he might send for that rising practitioner, Dr. Arabella Bolus, a cartoon from Punch magazine in 1865. Question: would this cartoon be likely to help or hinder the acceptance of women doctors?